Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming, tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, we're talking about Nintendo Switch emulation with Eden. And Eden seems to be developing at a very rapid pace, and one that is so rapid that the last time I talked about this one, I was looking at an outdated changelog. So at the time of filming, the latest version of Eden is version 0.0.3, which I think brings about a whole bunch of very interesting changes and improvements, and also fixes. Now, I would say that this is a pretty big release for Eden, and they say that this release contains platform parity improvements and support for some new games and updates. And on top of that, they say here added separate DMA precision level option, incremental Vulkan improvements, JIT improvements, and even more. This is a pretty big one. It's also worth noting that they removed firmware 20 plus warning on the games list because firmware 20 plus is not supported at this time. Now, furthermore, there's improved macOS support, FreeBSD, OpenBSD support, JIT backend improvements, improved fast GPU time, higher overclock values, increased resolution at the cost of performance. Fast CPU time option overclocks the emulated CPU, may improve FPS caps in some games, but may also cause unwanted speedups or performance drops. On top of that, they fixed FMV green screens on all platforms, hardware accelerated video decoding for H.264, VP8, and VP9 on all supported GPUs and platforms. They fixed Mario Kart 8 Deluxe controller applet freeze. They've also fixed crashes when attempting to read or apply new Switch 2 compatibility updates. They've implemented airplane mode. Certain games phone home by default and require airplane mode to be enabled to play. And custom CPU tick option changes emulated CPU's ticks, can improve performance at the cost of stability. On top of that, there's even more here. I mean, there is so much stuff here. If I went over the changelog in detail, this would be like a 30-minute video. Taking a look on the renderer, sample shading improves shader and image quality but may affect performance. MSAA improvements, various fixes to Vulkan and its extensions. They've fixed Rift rendering and Echoes of Wisdom. They've added a new 0.25 times resolution option, I'm assuming for lower end devices trying to run this emulator. And on top of that, there is still even more. I mean, look here on Android, support for various game hubs. They've removed frame skip entirely while they work on it. They've improved multiplayer support and even more. A driver fetcher automatically recommends a driver depending on your device, allows for instant download and install from various repositories. They've improved compatibility with older devices and even more. I mean, there is so much stuff in here. On the desktop version, there's even a lot of stuff. If you are interested in reading up on this and learning more about it, like everything we talk about, links will be in the description below, within the GitHub link in the description below right at the bottom. I don't hide my sources. This is an absolutely massive release for Eden. And continuing to talk about Switch emulation, next up we're talking about Strato. Now, you probably haven't heard from Strato in quite some time, and that's completely understandable. But it does appear the development team is trying to get Hollow Knight's Silksong up and running within Strato. Now, I do want to point out here, I was debating whether or not to talk about Strato in this video, and I don't think the community is going to mind me saying that I don't necessarily think this emulator is ready for prime time. Development is continuing on with this thing, but at a very leisurely pace. So I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock in Strato just yet. It seems more of an enthusiast thing, and maybe that's a hot take. I don't know here. But if you wanted to learn more about Strato, they do have a Discord link on their website. And speaking about Hollow Knight Silksong and heads ups, next up we're talking about Hollow Knight Silksong, and this is a heads up. It appears that an unofficial port of Hollow Knight Silksong is in the works for Android. Now, from my understanding, based on videos I've seen in other sources, Hollow Knight Silksong is already very playable on Android via stuff like GameHub and Winlator, and in a very good state. I'd be curious to know how an unofficial Android port would stack up in comparison. And speaking about Winlator, next up we're talking about Winlator Cmod, which is a very popular fork of Winlator, and this is not good news at all. So this is from PissBlaster649, which, aside from the hilarious name, this is not good news. And this is the main person behind Winlator Cmod. They say here, last Monday, exactly 1 week ago, I lost both my computer and my phone, alongside some very important local code and my development environment. After weighing all the possibilities and realizing that it wasn't worth the effort to attempt to recreate and rework all that was lost, especially considering that since I started, all I receive from Android users are mostly complaints and hatred. As of today, the repo has already been archived, putting an end to the fastest and most feature-rich Winlator fork, most likely forever, since I believe nobody else will be able to continue it the same way and with the same pace as I did. Goodbye, folks. I will definitely not miss all of this. Now, PissBlaster goes on to say, all Winlator Cmod nowadays are the same thing, and they are all compiled from my source code. If you want the latest Cmod, you either have to download Coffin Colors APK, it has extra additions regarding UI and controllers, or compile from my GitHub repo, no extra additions but newer codebase. Now, I think it's worth noting here that although it does seem that the Android community was a large factor in PissBlaster deciding not to work on this anymore, the big factor here, the biggest factor, is that their phone was stolen and all of the work along with it. So unfortunately, this does look like the end for Winlator Cmod, not Winlator in general, and not Winlator GLIBC, and possibly not some of the other Cmod forks. But the original Winlator Cmod seems to be dead. But moving on here, next up we're talking about the exact opposite, something dead to something very much alive, and talking about 3DS emulation with Azahar. And Azahar just got a brand new update. So at the time of filming, Azahar version 2123.2 release candidate 1 is the latest update. Now, this is a release candidate, it's not a stable build, so there may be bugs and issues with it. So this latest release candidate has a whole bunch of fixes across the board, Android, macOS, and Windows. And they say here, despite being a minor release, Azahar 2123.2 is receiving a release candidate. This is due to it containing notable internal changes to how the emulator is built, specifically on macOS and Windows. And speaking about updates, next up we're talking about XoDos. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's this or something else, I can't quite put my finger on it. Anyways here, XoDos is a fully fledged X server with Termux and Winlator touch controls together in one app. It is built with an Android NDK. So at the time of filming, XoDos version 5.9.0 is the latest update. And they say here, welcome to a huge update for XoDos. This release packs a massive punch with refinements across the entire app. From a polished UI to powerful new under-the-hood features for both Wine and the Proot environment. Get ready for a smoother, more compatible, and more controllable experience. And they're not joking here when they're saying this is a huge release. They've updated and fixed the app UI. There's new quick settings menu. There's Termux X11 performance boost. They've restored start menu and widgets. Wine Bionic updated. Fixed desktop scripts, fixed native desktop launcher, fixed Proot desktop script, and even more. Now, if the word Proot isn't familiar, maybe you've heard of proot before. I've heard it called both ways. Anyways here, the integrated proot environment has received a massive upgrade, turning it into a powerhouse for Windows applications. And it does include Wine 9.17. Additionally, there's now new Box64 integration, experimental turnip drivers, and even more. Like, this is a freaking huge update. If you've never heard of XoDos before, this might be worth checking out and learning more about. And again, like everything we talk about, links are within the GitHub link in the description below. And speaking about keeping your eyes on stuff, next up we're talking about something fairly new here called the Beep 8. Which is a new fantasy console built on ARM v4a emulation. Now, in my opinion, this is a pretty interesting project. It is free and open source. And they say here it's an emulation-first design, ARM v4a core plus peripheral devices, focused on hardware-like constraints to encourage retro-style development, and entirely browser-based, runs consistently on PC and smartphones. They've already got a website up here, beep8.org, showcasing a lot of this stuff in action. And I would say this is a really interesting concept overall. Let me know your thoughts. Next up here, we're talking about Android alternative GrapheneOS, which is a private and secure mobile operating system with Android app compatibility, developed as a non-profit open source project. And GrapheneOS has taken a few shots at Google. So Samir, who is the head of the Android ecosystem over at Google, says sideloading is fundamental to Android and it's not going anywhere. As we said in our blog, our new developer identity requirements are designed to protect users and developers from bad actors, not to limit choice. I would disagree with that. Anyways, we want to make sure that if you download an app from a developer, regardless of where you get it, that it's actually from them. That's it. Now, before we get into Graphene's response here, I would say I disagree with this statement altogether. I would say it's something else under the guise of security. I could be wrong with that one. That could be a hot take, but realistically, there seems to be other things at play here. I really don't agree with this decision at all. To me, it makes no sense whatsoever. Now, I'm going to stop myself before I go on a tangent here, and I have talked about this in previous videos, but maybe it's worth to keep talking about, not that Google's going to pay attention. Anyways here, this is what GrapheneOS says. It's a strange time to talk about Android protecting users. Android recently changed the security update system in a way which massively downgrades security and puts users at risk. Commercial exploit companies and governments can easily obtain access to broadly distributed partner previews. Adding 4-month delays for patches is atrocious. Then Graphene goes on to say, and they brought receipts. In June, you folks claimed AOSP wasn't going anywhere. You then proceeded to not release the July or August monthly updates to AOSP, followed by not releasing the September quarterly update. You officially communicated to the media and said AOSP releases were continuing, followed by 3 months of not pushing releases to it. Why should people believe what you say about sideloading? And I would agree with GrapheneOS here. Now, in my opinion here, there is a very simple and straightforward fix that I think would satisfy everybody. Google if you are listening and if you even care. Both of which I don't think are true, but in the event that you are listening and you do care here, if you still wanted to go with your mandate and your messaging of security, there's an easy way to satisfy everybody. Make it a developer option. If someone goes into developer mode, knows how to enable developer mode, and then goes into it, make it a toggle to allow APKs from unverified developers. And then once you toggle it on, have a huge warning that the user is accepting all of the risk. Honestly here, I think this would be a simple and straightforward fix that would basically satisfy everyone. I mean, if someone doesn't know how to enable developer mode, you would argue they probably shouldn't be sideloading APKs, especially those from unverified developers. On top of that, I think this would take the risk off you and also protect people. Either way, this would be a really easy thing to implement, I think, and would satisfy the masses. Let me know your thoughts about that in the comments below, both you, Google, and anyone else watching this video. And speaking about Android, next up here, we're talking about devices that run Android and arguably won't be affected by this whole sideloading thing because it's an unverified device. We're talking about Ayaneo here and the Konkr Pocket Fit. So the other day they teased this thing, which runs a Snapdragon G3 Gen 3, and they say pricing on this was less than $369. I was joking, it's going to be $368. Fortunately, it's even cheaper than that. So Ayaneo already has the Indiegogo up and running for the Pocket Fit Konkr, or the Konkr Pocket Fit, or whatever order they want to put it in here. And there's two different chipsets, the Snapdragon 8 Elite and the Snapdragon G3 Gen 3. So the Pocket Fit powered by the G3 Gen 3 chip is priced here at the super early bird price. It starts at $239, regularly $300. And that has 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of onboard storage. And if you wanted to go up just a little bit here, it's $269 for a Snapdragon 8 Elite with 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage. Furthermore, if you wanted more RAM and storage, the 12 gig RAM version with 256 gigs of onboard storage, the G3 Gen 3 one goes for $300. And the Snapdragon 8 Elite one goes for $340. For even more RAM and storage, 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gigs of onboard storage, the G3 Gen 3 is $350. And the 8 Elite is $389. And for even more storage here, 1 terabyte of storage, the G3 Gen 3 is $400 and the 8 Elite is $500. And it is worth noting here, the $500 Snapdragon 8 Elite version has 24 gigs of RAM. They also have a funky version here with the Snapdragon 8 Elite at $539. Now, I'm not going to lie here. I am really curious to hear your thoughts on the matter, and let me know in the comments below. What seems more attractive here, the Ayaneo Konkr Pocket Fit with the Snapdragon 8 Elite and 8 gigs of RAM and 128 gigs of storage for the early bird price of $269, or the Ayaneo 3 with the same specs, at least from a chip and RAM and storage perspective, priced at $300, so $30 more expensive. Now, I'm not going to get into a hugely detailed video directly comparing these devices, but I will say right out of the gate, the big difference between the two, at least one of them here, is the screen. So the Ayaneo Konkr Pocket Fit has a 6-inch 1080p 144Hz LCD display, where the Ayaneo 3 has an AMOLED display. It is 6-inch, it's at 120Hz instead of 144. Let me know your thoughts about that difference. And speaking about gaming handhelds and pricing, next up we're going a little bit higher up the pricing ladder and talking about the upcoming Lenovo Legion Go 2. And it's being reported that the Lenovo Legion Go 2 will get Xbox mode that is coming to the ROG Xbox Ally. Now, unfortunately, and this is a big one, it doesn't seem that Xbox FSE, which is hitting the ROG Xbox Ally right out of the gate, will be hitting the Legion Go 2 right out of the gate. It seems that Xbox FSE will be hitting the Legion Go 2 at some point in the future. So from my understanding, based on reporting here, spring 2026 is when the Lenovo Legion Go 2 will get Xbox FSE, where FSE stands for, well, it stands for something. It also stands for full screen experience. And speaking about stuff being reported, last up here, we're talking about Nintendo. And it's being reported that Nintendo has won a $2 million settlement against a Switch mod chip seller. Now, based on my understanding, the mod chip in question is the MIG Switch or MIG Flash. And the store in question, I believe, is modded hardware. Now, it's worth noting here, this was not proven in court, but rather a settlement before it got taken to court. At least that's what the article is saying here. Now, it's worth noting here, and I think we talked about this one a while back, the lawsuit claimed that Nintendo had contacted Ryan Daly, who I guess owned and operated modded hardware, back in March 2024 and threatened to sue him unless he stopped selling modded Switch consoles and MIG switches. And I guess he didn't. He kept selling them. I would recommend checking out this Video Games Chronicle article for more information on the matter. And it seems that this was settled before it even got to court, with Nintendo and Ryan Daly agreeing for Ryan to pay $2 million to Nintendo. And a permanent injunction will also be ordered, which will prevent Ryan Daly from ever handling, selling, or promoting any modded devices or modded consoles, or providing any documentation or information which might help other people carry out their own mods. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and the legendary one fluff. We talked about a bunch today. Feel free to discuss anything we talked about in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state.